All right, guys, 3 episodes, and y'all still love us, and we appreciate it. It's the 3rd edition of the Friday Roundup. Welcome to the show.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, Brad, welcome back to the studio. How you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. We've had quite a morning here in Central Virginia. We had a big snowstorm. I know you lost power, so it's pretty crazy.
We're almost there. We're crawling to the finish line. Spring is almost here. Just got to make it just a few more days, and lose power this morning. Fantastic.
I should say ice storm. Actually, we didn't have too much snow by May, but we had a bunch of ice. But yeah, it's been crazy.
Totally ridiculous. Okay, so this past Monday, we had the episode with Mr. 1500 from 1500 Days, and Carl was walking us through the phases of FI, how to build a money philosophy and, designing that post-FI life. And I really found that fascinating, partially because it's something we all need to think about, and partially because he was right there at the door, and I think he's gone through it and is now on the other side. Am I right about that, Brad?
Yeah, I believe he said that, he's at the point where he's nearly giving up his job entirely. I think he's currently working on a 3-day-a-week work week, but he is, at FI as far as his number. And now it's, just a matter of being entirely out on his own.
So I always wonder to myself, how much farther out am I before I'm in the position where I'm making the choice similar to what Carl was able to do? And, I feel like for most people, it's if you're actively pursuing this, it's a 10 to 15 year plan, something like that from day zero. It's a 10 to 15 year plan. Would you say that that's something that's pretty close?
I think it's very realistic, certainly. I think, it's all based on savings rate and, that kind of stuff. But yeah, 10 to 15 years would certainly be very plausible for most people who are really taking this as a lifestyle. So I know your timeline hopefully is a little shorter than that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot shorter.
A lot. I think when I get closer to it and I've got that number in mind, I'm going to do something just to one up them and be like 800 days. And I'm going to have a partner website just beside Choose FI called 800 Days to Freedom. And I'm just going to, anytime you post something, I'm going to chop the days in half and throw half the days right there.
Nice. In your face, Mr. 1500.
It's coming.
Nice. But yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I love the philosophy. I think that is as people have heard on this podcast, I talk about that all the time. That's really my big thing. I think the mechanics of FI is once you get a handle on it, it's pretty easy, honestly, but it's wrapping your mind around, what you want to do, what you want to get out of life. Those are the big questions. So, right. And, most people just kind of go about their normal lives and just, go from one day to the next and don't really think about those larger questions. But those of us pursuing financial independence really have to. And because otherwise you're going to reach that number. Like Carl said, you're going to reach that number and it's not going to bring you happiness in and of itself. So you need to figure out, truly what life is all about. And, if I can just paraphrase a couple of quotes, I'm going to largely quote Carl here, but he said, the true goal out of this whole journey isn't money. Money is just a tool that we use to do what we really want to do. It's not about money. It's about life. And that just was so powerful to me.
And I think one of the things that always strikes me is once you claw your time back from the things that just have you on this hamster wheel, once you claw your time back, you can then be more generous with that time. And you can invest in relationships. You can invest in people. You can explore. You can really develop your passions and find out what is it that you really want to do with this time. Because now, when you're on the hamster wheel, 80% of it is dedicated in one shape or form to just getting through the day. But when that's not there, what do you fill it with? And hopefully, if you've built this money philosophy, if you've built this framework for FI, you're going to really be able to fill that stuff up with the importance of health, surrounding yourself with the best people, living in a place that has outdoor pursuits, finding out what's going on at your library, raising your kids to be good, hardworking people, exploring the world, get back by volunteering. And I just think that if you can get to a place where you're doing that, how much happier is your life going to be?
Yeah, without a doubt. And, that's kind of what Carl touched on at the very beginning of the episode, which was when you have money in common, especially when you're pursuing FI and you have money in common, you have so many other things in common. I mean, it's these like-minded people that you just don't generally meet in the course of life. And, we were talking about board games and, conversations around the campfire and things like that. I mean, there's so much truth to that. And, I think a lot of people in this community are really seeing that. And, I've noticed just over like at the Camp Mustache event that we went to, that people are really talking about actually making these communities in real life. I know the organizer of the Camp Mustache down in Florida is actually legitimately talking about this and just seeing if it's plausible. And, I mean, to me, that is like a long-term goal in life is to live almost in a community where, you have all these people around you. And it's not just, for me, it's not just limited right now to FinCon, the conference that I go to every year, and then maybe one or two of these other events. But it could be like a year-round thing where you're actually surrounded by these people who are so similar to you. And I mean, in all honesty, that's not something I'm going to jump into next year. I have kids. We are, part of our community here in Richmond, and we're not going to uproot our lives for this, but who knows? I mean, that could be something where you go and visit for a couple of weeks a year, or 5 or 10 years from now you retire there or some such. So it's certainly something that a lot more people are realizing, the power of community. So it really makes me quite pleased to really see that happening.
Yeah, I'd love to get Pete on the show and talk to him about that at some point and see how he feels about where that stuff is going.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I know just in conversations with Pete, I mean, it's something that he's actually considering. So yeah, maybe if we're fortunate, we can get him on the podcast someday and chat about that specifically. So yeah, that would be cool. Another thing that jumped out at me from what Carl had to say was, he had this epiphany, which was that you don't have to work until you're 62 to 65, and that there really is this other way. And, he saw that after just having a bad day one day at work and Googling something like, how do I retire early? And, he came across Mr. Money Mustache, and, almost the rest was history in that sense. And, while we talk about this as a given, because we are involved in this community, it's very difficult for people to have that aha moment because this information doesn't cross their plate, which is so sad. I mean, it really comes down to math and psychology, but you have to be presented with it. And that's what we're trying to start, not start. Obviously, this has been started for years, but, we're trying to bring this to a larger audience here with this podcast. And, hopefully we're, changing minds, even if it's, one person at a time. That would be a life well lived as far as I'm concerned, And
one other thing about that, and I was thinking about it, when you posted that picture of your odometer on Twitter the other day, and you had just passed 100,000 miles, and that's awesome.
Frugal win of the week.
Yeah, but we had someone on Twitter. She said only in the FI community do people get excited about cars that have over 100,000 miles on it. And she was appreciating it, liking it, and I thought that was awesome because how powerful is it when instead of living next to the Joneses, you live next to someone that's committed to financial independence? It changes your whole compass, and it really empowers you. It makes it easier for you to get to financial independence because if all your neighbors are telling you how they're all getting brand new cars and you have the ugly beater in the driveway, you are going to feel the pressure to then step up your game. But if all your neighbors are working toward financial independence, your compass has changed. And instead of that, now you get to brag about your car that has over 100,000 miles, not because it has over 100,000 miles, because it's representative of the choices that you've made in this life to get your family to FI faster. And that is what, when I see that, when you posted that, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing someone that, can spend time taking his kids to school every day. He can check in and work when he wants to, and he can check out when he needs to take a break. It's totally optional for you. And so it's a different metric. It's not 100,000 miles for 100,000 miles, but that 100,000 miles represents a life choice that is allowing you to spend time with your family and with your kids and just all these other cool things.
Yeah, that's really neat. I like that perspective, Jonathan. And, honestly, it's something that I hadn't thought about that deeply. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it represents, to me, it's 6 years of no car payments and hopefully another 10 to go, and not wasting money on those dopey keeping up with the Joneses type things. And that kind of ties into what Carl said also, right? Which was really such a stark example. When they moved into that McMansion monstrosity, and literally some little girl walked over to his daughter and asked how many of those American Girl dolls she had, excuse me. And I mean, that was just crazy that these kids are already hit with this materialism. And, they basically, the little girl like rolled her eyes at Carl's daughter. And, when she said she didn't have any, I mean, like, could you imagine living in a community where that's the norm? I mean, that's just absolutely abhorrent to me. And, luckily Carl and Mindy decided to pick up and move. I mean, what a crazy thing, right? They actually put up a for sale sign 2 weeks after they moved into a house. I mean, that takes some guts,
Yeah, that was pretty striking. It really does take some resolve. But as you can see, when you look at kind of their financial trajectory and their happiness as a family, I mean, they've anchored themselves to this long-term mindset. And I with the benefit of hindsight and perspective, I can understand and appreciate it. All right, everyone, I feel like we're starting to get some direction for what we want this show to be, what we want to do with this platform, starting to get a cadence to it. So on Monday, that's where we're going to try to bring in a new idea, a new guest, a new topic, and really dive into that information and explore it for the community. On Friday, the cadence of this, on Friday is going to be an opportunity, a roundup, right? Where we are actually going to crowdsource the show. That gives us the opportunity to do a couple things. One, to slow down on the episode and see what we missed, maybe based on your own feedback, maybe based on what we realized, maybe after we recorded it, gives us a chance to do a little bit more research and round out the conversation. It also gives us the ability to bring in your feedback, your questions, and maybe corrections or criticisms, and have all that happen here. And so please take us up on this. What we view this show as being is a hub for the financial independence community and truly a crowdsourced platform. So that's going to be a mixture of, writers and podcasters and people in the space that have been talking about these ideas for a while, and your ideas, your feedback. If you want to partner with us and be on the show, either because you come on the show or you leave a voicemail or send us an email that we read aloud on the show, the Friday Roundup gives us the ability to bring in ideas from the entire community. And we think that's a real strength, and it kind of helps the show figure out what its identity will be going into the future. So to be a part of that, to join with us on this, the easiest way, if you have a suggestion, would just be to send us an email to feedback@choosefi.com, feedback@choosefi.com. And for those of you that are maybe finding the show and are ready to get started on your own path to financial independence, the easiest way by far, both to find out, what are the episodes I really need to listen to? What are the content that I really need to understand? We've actually created an infographic, a free ebook for you that you can access at choosefi.com/start, choosefi.com/start. Or if you don't have access to the internet at the moment, you can just text ChooseFI, that's one word, ChooseFI to 44222, ChooseFI to 44222. All right, this is the part of the show where I'm going to insert a little bit of made up on the spot legalese. And this is where I just kind of remind you guys that we are not financial professionals. Far from it. We are lay people that very much enjoy exploring personal finance, and we will make mistakes. Our sole goal, though, is just to relay the information to you as we interpret it to the best of our ability. But this is for entertainment and education. Before making significant financial choices or changes, please consult your financial professional. All right. So having said that, we can make mistakes. We'll try to be transparent and honest. When we find out that we've made a mistake, we're going to relay that to you as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's an omission. Sometimes it's really just a correction. And in this case, from Millionaire Educator, it was pointed out to us by two people, one on being RCAD. He said that it's very important that people that are investing in the 457 plan be aware that this is not protected by creditors. So if a company goes bankrupt, you could lose this money. Therefore, this is not risk-free. Now, RCAD goes on to say, now this has not stopped me and many others from using this vehicle, but whenever discussing the 457, you need to discuss this risk. And then Sunwoo Lee actually weighed in as well. He's been going through a lot of our articles and actually has pointed out a bunch of things where maybe we were not as accurate as we could have been or could have been more exact. And Sun Wu says, it's really important to point out that there exist non-governmental 457Bs. So those can be provided by non-governmental tax-exempt organizations like hospitals and charities. And these would have significant downside as opposed to government 457Bs, as the assets are not held in trust for the employees. They're actually considered their employer's assets until they're paid out to the employee. So if the employer goes under, a hospital or a nonprofit goes under, the creditors can take money from your 457. So, Brad, my takeaway here is if you put those two together with a 457, you just need to think through, are you working the 457 that you're putting your money into? Is that a government-run 457, or is it a private entity, maybe a nonprofit like a hospital? Because you just want to think through what would happen if that entity went bankrupt. And so I think this is one of those things that's really important to understand. I want to point it out to people. But I don't know if it would necessarily keep me from investing in it. You just want to be aware of it. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
And one other, actually on the Millionaire Educator, I guess 457s are very technical. And, obviously we are just trying to present this as best we can. So it's huge that you guys are jumping in here with the corrections. Luis said, just a heads up on the 457 accounts, you need to have a bona fide separation from your employer to withdraw tax-free. I think the Millionaire Educator mentioned that because he changed jobs. Just thought the listeners in the public sector, like me, could use the clarity. So thank you very much. That's an important note, that you can't just dump money in a 457 and pull it out whenever you want. There has to be that separation of service.
We had one other correction, and this one was from episode 5, and Sun Wu has become our official guy that's going through and making sure we're staying on point with this stuff. And he actually pointed out, I think that I had said that with the Roth, contributions need to, I use the word season, for 5 years before you can pull them out without any sort of penalty. And Sun Wu pointed out that is not the case, that you can actually pull out your contributions at any point in time. And he gave me the exact specific details, but I just wanted to relay that to you as well. And actually, to me, that makes the Roth even more powerful as an investment vehicle, especially when you're in your teens and early 20s and you're essentially in a very low tax rate, because you can put that money in there anytime, essentially as an emergency fund, and you can pull it out, anytime without any sort of penalty.
Yeah, that makes sense, certainly. And yeah, just a big thanks to Sun Wu. We met him actually at the Camp Mustache event, and just a really brilliant guy and just a good guy. So thanks for listening so intently. We appreciate it.
All right, so here's another success story. This is from Jason. He says, Jonathan and Brad, love the show. As you guys have mentioned, even if I can't implement all the ideas that are presented, grab onto some nuggets and apply them. I've done that. My wife and I are currently on our second Chase Sapphire. We're now sitting on approximately 110,000 ultimate rewards points. Brad, you opened my eyes to a new way our money can be working for us. And Millionaire Educator has us tax planning for 2017. With 2 children and strategic savings, that 10% bracket is certainly within our grasp. And then he actually had a question on that, which maybe we can take a look at. He says, I want to move our Roths from their current location where we pay high expense ratios plus an advisor fee, and he wants to send it over to Vanguard and go index all the way. Most likely, he wants to do 70-30 VTSAX and then 30% VBTLX. And he just wants us to know, they're both in their mid-30s, so it seems like a moderate blend. But he says, how can I, in good conscience, invest 70% of our Roth assets in VTSAX when that bubble is looking quite plump? Should I just do it anyways and just remember over the long run it'll only be a blip on the radar? Or do we move to Vanguard and play it more conservative because of the current climate? Just wanted a second opinion. Keep up the great work. Jonathan, the site looks awesome. Hey man, I read that last part because I love the plug. Thank you. All right, Brad, what are your thoughts?
Well, my first thoughts are, great work, Jason. I mean, how cool that he's listening to all this and really taking action. I mean, that is fantastic. I mean, Jonathan and I talked about this offline, and it just legitimately makes us happy. So yeah, I mean, it's really awesome. I guess his question is about moving to Vanguard and about this bubble. I think one of the most difficult parts of investing is timing. And we don't have the ability to market time. If we did, we'd be billionaires. And, you have to time it perfectly. And if you sit on the sidelines for too long, all of a sudden that bubble at, a Dow, 20,000 or whatever is all of a sudden a Dow 40,000. And, is it a bubble then? I mean, I'm kind of speaking generally and hypothetically here, but like, you can't time the market. I can't time the market. Warren Buffett can't time the market. Nobody can time the market. It's just too difficult. So, while there are ways, again, I always come back to the psychology. Like if you really felt like it, there's always the math versus the psychology. If it's going to tear you up to have all your money in the stock market right now and it's going to keep you up at night, then maybe that's not right for you. The math would suggest dump it all in Vanguard, leave it there, wake up 40 years from now and be a very happy person, right? That's what the math would suggest. And there are going to be ups and downs. There are going to be corrections all the time. If you can't stomach that, it's going to make for a very difficult ride. I honestly don't look at my investments on any kind of regular basis because I know it'll only let my stupid human brain into the decision making and will screw it up. So I try to avoid looking, thinking, doing anything other than just keep on pumping money into my investments every single week. That is my goal. If I can do that, I know 40 years from now I'm going to wake up with a pot of probably tens of millions of dollars. So, Jonathan, I'd love to throw it over to you. I'm sure you have your own thoughts, different thoughts, whatever. But, like I think market timing is a fool's errand and we just don't know. And, listen, the stock market could go down 20% in the next month. And, I still don't think I'll look like an idiot based on this advice because you cannot time the market. You just can't.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Jason, I'm probably more like you. I'd probably get a little fearful that I'm going to miss the window. And I don't think we're the only one. We're interviewing a guest, and I'm not going to tell you who, that made a similar confession, even though they know they still struggle with it. So it's a very real fear that I think you have. I'll be honest, though, frankly, the more I listen to Brad, the more I want to be like him. So I probably will at some point, end up in the same position where you have this windfall. All of us at some point in our life, hopefully will have some sort of windfall, whether it be $1,000 or 5,000 or 100,000, whatever it is, it's coming for a lot of us at some point for some reason. And then you'll have to figure out what you want to do with it. And I think the general advice that Brad just gave is awesome. If you're really worried about it though, you could just dollar cost average it over the course of a year, maybe drop it in quarterly, 25% of the time to capture it over different rates if you feel like that averages your risk out. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the overlying principle is you should not be subject to the whims of the stock market. That's what you're avoiding when you're doing index fund. You're not worrying about it. You know that over time it's going up and you're just getting yourself and your psychology out of the way and just letting it do what it does.
Yeah. And just to jump in real quick, I am not infallible by any means, though I appreciate the compliment. It's the exact opposite. I'm a moron at this just like everybody else. And if I know that I'm terrible at it. And if I let my brain get involved, I will screw it up. I know that I will because that's just how it works. So I try to just put it on autopilot as much as possible and just not think about it. That just makes my life much easier.
And everyone, like, there's so much amazing content coming your way over the next couple months. We're going to be talking with Mad Fientist. We're going to be discussing the Roth conversion ladder. We're going to bring on Go Curry Cracker. We're going to be looking at tax gain harvesting, tax loss harvesting. I mean, we're going to bring on JL Collins here very soon. We're going to be talking about the importance of understanding index fund investing. There is some serious content coming your way, and it's going to be so much fun to dive into it. I just wanted to remind you that, like, if you're all new to this, everything I just said just went right over your head, and you're like, man, how do I get started? We've actually made it incredibly easy just to dive into the content and get started on your own path to financial independence. We've got a free ebook for you called Financial Independence Made Simple. And to access that and get on our weekly newsletter where we send you a copy of all the resources, the links, articles, everything that we're producing and collating for you. To do that, just go to choosefi.com/start and get started on your own path to financial independence today.
And we have a couple of other, nice short iTunes reviews here. I just wanted to read quickly. One from DocMom21. So glad I came across this podcast. Love it. Thank you for all the advice. I just recommended this podcast on a large Facebook group that I'm in because I want lots of other people to benefit from all your great info. Thanks again. Well, thank you very much, Doc Mom, for sharing it. That's absolutely wonderful. And Gypsy Schick said, fantastic podcast. These guys are relatable, informed, and inspirational. Of all the financial podcasts I listen to, this is the one I'm eagerly waiting for each week. Great content for anyone interested in financial independence or retiring early. Well, thank you all very, very much. We really appreciate it. And yeah, if anyone out there listening, the biggest thing you can do to help us is to just head over to iTunes and just search Choose FI, one word, and just leave us a short review and hopefully a 5-star rating. It'll only take you a minute, but we just cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. So thank you.
All right, we had another question. This is from Dave. Dave says, hey guys, love the blog and the podcast. I'm just starting my FI journey and I'm a bit confused about something. Knowing where you are on the FI journey seems best measured by tracking your net worth. In fact, Rockstar Finance, which you listed above, and I think that's on one of our articles, our early retirement articles, where we have a list of a lot of blogs and podcasts that we found helpful over time, and Rockstar Finance was listed there. But Rockstar Finance has a blogger net worth tracker, and he said, here's where I'm confused. Net worth is traditionally defined as assets minus liabilities, as far as I know. Yet many FI bloggers seem to measure their net worth as only their assets and ignore their liabilities. Some in the list measure it the traditional way. I imagine most of the liability interest rates are very low, but I don't know how or why the balances of liabilities are ignored. For example, No Nonsense Landlord, which is number 2 on the list, says his net worth is the sum of the investment accounts plus a realistic selling price. He ignores the almost $500,000 in mortgage balance in his net worth calculation. He is ranked in the tracker just by his total assets. So here's my question. Do some FIers measure net worth differently? Is there an understood agreement in the FI world that assets are more important than liabilities?
All right, Dave, this is a good question, multi-layered question. So I'm going to give my opinion and Jonathan will jump in with his. Yes, I've noticed that people in the FI community measure net worth differently, but it's usually kind of at the margins. It's not what you're talking about specifically, and I will touch on that, but some people in the FI community include the equity in their home, and some just consider their investable assets. So, while that's not at the margin per se, since, the equity in your home can be a significant amount, some people just take that as a legitimate difference of opinion. So, that's plausible. In my net worth, sometimes I include things like, I always look at it as like a net liquidating value. Like what is my actual net worth after all is said and done? So, I'll include the value of my cars. And, if I had something particularly valuable, I might include it in a net worth as well. That's the kind of stuff at the margin. But your question is a bigger one, which is, why do people not include their liabilities? And, I know nothing about No Nonsense Landlord, so this is not an implication either way, shape, or form of that person. But for any net worth calculation, you need to include your liabilities. That's just the accountant in me. It's just very simply, you add up all your assets, you take out your liabilities, and that's your net worth. So that is an absolute no-brainer in my opinion. Like I said, the at the margin stuff, we can, people of good faith can decide whether they want to include the equity in their home and things like that. But it's absolutely ridiculous to include the selling price of your home, but not include the mortgage. I mean, that's absurd. So, you just can't do that. If you really wanted to get deep on this, you could, talk about the amount in your IRA, which is tax deferred. Is it really worth 100% on the dollar? Because it's going to be taxed at some point. And then we get down deep into the, the tax optimization strategies of, the mad scientists and things like that. And, that's a whole separate issue. But, if you're talking like your net liquidating value, what is that money worth to me? It might not be worth 100%. So, again, I could keep talking about this for quite some time, but the short answer is there's a difference of opinion, but I think without any question, you need to include your liabilities in any kind of net worth calculation.
I think there's something about doing the public net worth tracker that it just rubs me the wrong way, in terms of putting it out there. And I think it's because one of the things I find so attractive about FIRE and the FIRE community is that he who has the biggest pot is not the winner in this game. It's not this race to the finish where you have a number 1 and a number 20. And, the number one is a winner because they have the most money and they're a millionaire or a billionaire. In the FIRE community, our ultimate goal is not to be the one with the most money. It is financial independence, it's freedom, it's flexibility. And that's a completely different calculation. And it doesn't really have to do with what that top number is, but rather it is a variable in this equation that says my life costs this and my passive income, whether it be from investments or real estate or anything else, produces this. And once they even out, you're now financially independent. And so, I don't think that I've listed mine on there. Maybe I would if I were a billionaire. I don't know. But I don't think I put it on there. And I think it's something about that is that while I would include a net worth as a tool when I'm sharing with people how to do that calculation, I wouldn't have a problem with that. It's not a hammer to hit people with. Rather, it's a way to motivate people and show people how they can achieve their own level of financial independence. And again, that's just one of the things I've always found very attractive about the FIRE community. When we were at that mustache camp that we always talk about, we were there with people that were worth 50,000. We were there with people that were worth 10 million. But you would never know that in that group because everybody was sharing their experiences and they all used the same tools to get there. They had cars with 100,000 miles on it. They live far beneath their means. They use their margin to create these passive income sources. And the focus was not to have the biggest sum in that net worth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's that number. It's not the status that it is in real life. So, I totally agree with you there. I personally would have a hard time sharing my net worth. I think I don't know. Especially my wife has no interest in us ever sharing that. It's not that I'm especially worried about sharing it for any reason, but we're just kind of private people. So, you're probably never going to see a net worth statement from me. But yeah, I think it's certainly an interesting conversation at the very least. All right. On our Friday roundups, we like to just take one travel rewards question that we received from the audience and just kind of talk through it real quick. So just again, a reminder, our podcast on travel rewards, which we think is pretty much the best intro on this concept, anywhere on the internet, is at choosefi.com/009. So that's a great way to get started. And Jamie wrote in with a question just saying, I have over 100,000 Chase Ultimate Rewards points, and I really need to know, what are your favorite transfer partners? I understand from listening to you that, there are 3 different ways to redeem the Chase Ultimate Rewards points, and that transferring them to travel partners are the most lucrative. But I need to know, A, how do I do this? And B, what are the most valuable of these partners? All right, Jamie, that's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, actually physically transferring them is pretty easy. So that's, we'll just touch on that real quick. You can just log into your Chase online account. You click your points balance. That'll take you to the Ultimate Rewards area. And you'll see there's a drop down for travel, and one of the options, I don't have it in front of me, but it's transfer to travel partners is probably the wording they use. And when you click on that, you'll see the 11 different transfer partners of Chase Ultimate Rewards. And what they'll do, just very simply, they'll ask you for your account number at that, let's say, airline or hotel, let's say Hyatt Hotels. They'll ask for your account number and just your last name, and that's it. And that's all it takes to actually link up that account. So what I would recommend, just to save some time, in a point down the line where you actually want to redeem, is I would just create those accounts now. So this kind of ties into the second half of your question, which is, what are the best of those transfer partners? And, for me, there are generally 4 that I consider the highest value, and then a few others that you can definitely get some significant value out of. So the 4 that I like the most are Southwest Airlines, Hyatt Hotels, United Airlines, and British Airways. And we'll talk about British Airways a little bit more in depth, but so I would definitely create a free account at each of those 4 without question. And, just link up these accounts with your Chase Ultimate Rewards account. So that means, at any point down the road, if you want to make that transfer, you don't have to scramble and quickly, sign up and link it and do all this stuff. You just know it works. So that's just kind of my little, strategy hack, is just do that beforehand. And then the other partners that I get some value out of sometimes are kind of like the sweet spot redemptions, we call them. So there's Singapore Airlines and Korean Air. So generally speaking, you hear those and you're like, where on earth would I use these? I'm not planning on traveling to Asia anytime soon. But that gets at a larger strategic point of the airlines and the award charts and really the airline alliances is when you have, let's say, Singapore Airlines miles, you can fly on any of the Star Alliance partners. So United Airlines is a perfect example of that. So while Chase Ultimate Rewards already transfer to United, there are instances where the Singapore Airlines award chart has these sweet spots, like for instance to Hawaii. And I'm pretty sure we mentioned this on our episode 9 podcast. But if you had, for instance, you wanted to fly from the continental U.S. to Hawaii, it would cost you 45,000 United miles to fly on a United airplane. But it would actually only cost you 35,000 Singapore miles to fly that exact same airplane. So it would save you 10,000 miles round trip just by knowing that little hack. So, that is beyond the scope of a short 5-minute answer here, but talking about all the specific details, but that's a really cool way of at least just getting a comprehension that these sweet spots do exist. So yeah, just, quickly going back, Southwest Airlines is the easiest of all the rewards programs to use. They don't have any blackout dates or reward limitations. So, I love them. Hyatt hotels, I find a lot of their category 1 and 2 hotels, which actually only cost 5,000 and 8,000 points respectively, to really carry a lot of value. So we've done quite well with category 1 and 2 Hyatts. And then you get into United. United passes along none of those junk fees that are called fuel surcharges. So United miles are actually really easy for international trips to Europe or Asia or really wherever you want to go. And finally, British Airways. And again, this is slightly outside the scope of this podcast, but British Airways you can actually use for those sweet spot redemptions here in the US on both American Airlines and Alaska Airlines. So that's actually some of using British Airways points of all things that's one of the best ways to fly in the US if you have flights on American Airlines and Alaska Airlines. So, you can find out more on our podcast, and we're definitely in our travel rewards section. We're going to continue to build that out and provide more info.
And to our audience, all the information that we're putting together now in the future, as we get these questions and we really flesh this out, we're creating a travel course for you because, this information, when you get hit with it all at once, it can be a little overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. It can be very simple. And once you understand the basics of the rules, the 80-20, the sweet spot of travel rewards, you're going to be able to travel virtually anywhere in the world for free. It is absolutely that powerful. So you're hearing this, do me a favor, a couple things here. One, if you haven't yet listened to it, go check out episode 9 of our podcast, episode 9. That's like our gateway episode that highlights how powerful this can be. And then if you're trying to figure out how to put your own plan in place, we created a free course. Just go to choosefi.com/travel. That's choosefi.com/travel. And it breaks it down in step by step. Anybody can do this. You got this. Check it out.
So I have a frugal win of the week, Brad. This week, we started preparing for our first yard sale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know.
Interesting.
We are unpacking 4 years of crap that's just been accumulating, and we're actually doing a yard sale. Now, I have heard about doing a yard sale for years, decades, is a great way to declutter your life and to earn extra money. And actually, my community organized it. So what they're going to do is they told everybody, you can pay this one-time small fee, and then we're going to have this community yard sale. You just set it up in your driveway. And whatever you don't sell, we're going to then have a Goodwill truck come by and they're going to just pick it up off your driveway for you. And so so I thought this brilliant idea. You're decluttering your life. We'll probably have somewhere between $100 and $200 worth of stuff that we'll be able to unpack. And my house is just going to be empty again. Feels so efficient.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's when we clean rooms in our house, we wind up calling it an oasis. That's what it feels like. It's just so mentally freeing, right? To like just have that look in a room and just see nothing, just see no piles of garbage where they, just wind up accumulating. So yeah, I totally hear you on that.
I'm gonna take a picture of that, and I'm gonna take a picture of all the crap that we found in the house that we're gonna be able to sell. I'll take a picture of it and put it on our Twitter feed this weekend. But very, very exciting to be able to. First of all, you don't even know how much junk you have. I mean, if it's been in your attic for 4 years or even for a year, probably there's no chance you're ever going to use it again. You should kind of use that as the line at which, okay, we could probably get rid of that. And I had stuff that had been there for 4 years and had never gone near it. So there was a lot of stuff that we could unpack.
Yeah, that's cool. Right. I mean, once it's up there for years, it's literally worth zero to you because you're never going to look at it. So yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, we have an upcoming frugal win. So I'll just kind of mention it now, which is we just cut the last check for preschool for my daughter, Molly. So she's going to kindergarten in the fall, and, she's been at this really wonderful preschool right around the corner from us for a couple of years now, just a morning preschool. But yeah, we literally just cut the last check for that. So, that's a not insignificant amount of money every month that we're paying. So that's a nice addition to Vanguard every month now that we can
getting a raise.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a couple $100 a month, just straight up after tax raise. So yeah, that's a pretty cool little frugal win of the week. Now
I can start going to our college fund. All right. So one thing that we really want to communicate to you, and I think we've done that, but your feedback is the lifeblood of Choose FI. Your thoughts and ideas are what help us go and find these really great conversations and then be able to present them to you. And so again, we just want to give a shout out to Isaac. Isaac, on almost a weekly basis, sends us his ideas and thoughts. And he's plugged a couple other blogs for us that we just want to give a shout out to. First, he mentioned Slowly Sipping Coffee, which you can find at slowlysippingcoffee.com. And he said, I love these guys. I feel like they're just outside of the FIRE mainstream blogosphere. He's never heard them on a podcast before. Just a real normal couple, 2 kids grinding to the FIRE finish line. He said their light bulb email post was the most influential thing in the FIRE journey. And he sent us the link to that, which we'll link to in the show notes. And so I haven't had a chance to check that out, but I'm really excited to do that. Fervent Finance. This is another guy that's just outside the big timer circles. Really enjoyed his writing. He's made some big lifestyle choices to reduce his expenses. He's also for the FIRE community under 30, which is a pretty cool perspective. So Isaac, sends us his ideas. He sends us links to great content. It really does help us out as we're preparing shows to give you all this awesome content. So we get it, in some cases we have a backlog of stuff ourselves, but it really is helpful when y'all shoot us your ideas and topics. This show is as good as our community is. And so we really do get better together. And so with that in mind, we're going to be kind of closing this upcoming week, this weekend. Prepare for Monday, where we have Justin from Root of Good coming on the show. And we're going to be unpacking some very cool ideas with him on what financial independence looks like with kids. And after you achieve early retirement, how does the dynamic change? How does it affect your kids? So I think y'all are really going to appreciate that. We also delve into what preparing for college looks like, how to do college the smart way. I'm going to say that this is not the final say on college. This is kind of just opening up the door for conversation. We are going to actually even be going deeper on this topic in the coming months and years, but this is to get the conversation going, and I think y'all are really going to appreciate that as well. Brad, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say just keep the feedback coming, especially on the Monday episodes. If you listen to Justin's episode on Monday and you have some great suggestion for how you save money on college, send it to us. Just shoot us an email, feedback@choosefi.com. Or if you have a question for Justin, or some clarification, or we might have said something wrong. We need your input. That is what's keeping this going. So, again, just thanks for listening. And, we just really love doing this. Honestly, hopefully you can hear it in our voices. This is the thing that gets us out of bed in the morning. As Jonathan and I talk every single day, and we just love this. So, thanks for being there. Thanks for downloading, and thanks for telling people about it.
All right, we'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled. If you want to get on that email list again, the phone number is 44222. Just text Choose FI to 44222. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.